As he said, Dr. Kern and I are on a Tuesday morning Bible study, and he heard my testimony. He said, I would come over here and tell y'all about it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little story about Charlie and Bobby. Charlie was a little Catholic boy, and Bobby was a little Baptist boy. And they were really good friends. They just together all the time. You see one, you see the other. And when they got to be teenagers, they told their parents, you know, the only time we don't get to hang out with each other is on Sunday morning. We go to different churches. We were wondering if it'd be okay if we kind of alternate, go to one church one week and go to the other church the next week. And the parents said, well, that'd be all right as long as you don't neglect your church, okay? So they flipped a coin and Charlie won, and they went to Charlie's Catholic church. And if you've ever been in a Catholic service, everything has symbolism, everything has meaning. So Charlie spent the whole time explaining to Bobby, well, this means this, and that means that. Well, the next Sunday morning, they went to Bobby's Baptist church, and they sang a few songs, and they took up an offering, and then someone sang some special music, and then the pastor came up there, and first thing he did was he took his watch off and he laid it right down there on the pulpit. And Charlie nudged Bobby and he said, what does that mean? Bobby said, absolutely nothing. Okay. So let you know I'm a Baptist, and I hope the seats are comfortable, okay? I didn't bring a watch, so. Yeah, okay, she's pointing. There's one up there. Okay, if it seems like it's stopped, we'll go knock on it a couple times, okay? I will tell you that when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old, my brother and my sister at a church in Houston, Texas, had gone down to the front and gave their life to Christ. And I didn't really know what happened, but my brother told me that if I did that, then I wouldn't have to worry about going to hell. And that sounded like a pretty good deal to me, so I wanted to go running right down there. And they asked me a few questions, and I knew what the answers were because he had prompted me on what to say. And so I guess I got them right because they said I was a member now and that I was saved. But really, that didn't change anything in my life. And I know when I was growing up in high school, you know, I was one of those Sunday Christians. Sunday morning I was at church because, you know, hey, that's where the girls were and that's where my friends were, and we hung out. And it was more of a social thing. I really, you know, I really didn't know that much about Christ, but if you asked me if I was a Christian, I'd say I was. But then when I was 20 years old, I moved to Idabel, Oklahoma, and started working at a paper mill there that they were building. And I would go to Emmanuel Baptist Church there in Idabel when I felt like it on Sunday mornings, when it wasn't too hard to get up. And I would go in, and I was there for a couple of years. And then in the summer of 1972, we had a couple of girls there from Alabama. They were what they called MK, missionary kids. And they were working with the kids in the neighborhood, and they were doing backyard Bible studies and things like that. And the last night they were there was July the 9th. And the pastor decided what we'd have is on the evening service, we'd have a testimonial service, and everybody could get up and say what the Lord was doing for them. Those two young ladies were first, and they got up and they talked about how they were working for the Lord and how the Lord was blessing them through their work, and how God was just exciting in their life. And I kept thinking, well, as soon as I get through, I'll get up and I'll say what all God has done for me. But it was like God had his hands on my shoulder and saying, wait a minute, what have you ever done for me? And I couldn't think of anything I'd ever done for God. It was all, what's in it for me? So when the service was over, they had an invitation. I went down to the front and I said, you know, Pastor, I need to rededicate my life. And he knew me. He had seen me for the last couple of years. And he said, you know, Don, it's really hard to rededicate something that's never been dedicated in the first place. He said, tell me about your walk with Jesus. And I didn't have anything to tell him about. So I decided, and he told me that I needed to get saved. So that night we prayed, and I asked Jesus into my heart. And it made a difference in my life. It changed my language. It changed my friends. It changed my day-to-day activities. And I got to realizing what it was really like to know Jesus Christ as a person and not just as somebody. You know, and it made a big change in my life. So I moved to Oklahoma City, and when I got up here, I was looking for a job, and there was an ad in the paper for apprentice electrician. So I joined the electrical union as an apprentice, and my second year, I was working for a company called Shaw for Electric. And as a second-year apprentice, you get to do all the fun things like crawling under the house and going up into the attics and doing all the things the journeyman didn't want to do. And my normal routine was to go to work early in the morning and then find out whoever needed help that day and go on the truck with them. Well, February 12th, well, I'm going to tell you something first. They asked me this morning, was I going to sing? And I said, not unless you want to clear the church out. No, I'm not. Because the Lord blessed me a lot of ways, but one of them wasn't a singing voice. So it surprised me when just before Christmas in 1974, some of y'all may have remembered a young man that was here before he went over to Cherokee Hills. He was Ron Brewer was his name. He was the music and youth minister here back in the 70s. Anyway, he was at our church, and he asked me if I would sing in the choir for a Christmas cantata. And I asked him, I said, have you ever heard me sing? He said, no. And I said, well, I don't sing very well. He said, well, can you make a joyful noise? And okay, well, I can do that. So I said, as long as you promise me I won't have to sing a solo. And he said, okay, yeah, you won't have to sing a solo. Now, over the years, I found out those music guys, they'll lie to you. After a few weeks of practice, he said, I need a man to sing a 4-line solo. And the 4-line solo was, I will be a witness, I will be a witness, I will be a witness for my Lord. That's from a cantata by William Reynolds called Reaching People. So I started practicing. I would get the record out, that's how long ago it was. Get the record out and I'd practice, get the book, and I will be a witness, I will be a witness. But I got to thinking as I was practicing, you know, Lord, I'm not much of a witness for you. Tell you what, Lord, if you'll grant me a testimony, then I'll be a witness for you. And so I started praying and asking God for a testimony. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, be careful what you ask for, because sometimes when God answers your prayer, it's not exactly what you had in mind. You know, bringing it up to date, I was thinking something more like winning the lottery or Ed McMahon coming on my door with one of those big checks he used to pass out or something like that. And then I could give a lot of money to the church, and that'd be a great testimony. But God had something else in mind. I will tell you that on Sunday night just before Christmas, 1974, I sang my 4-line solo, and that was 43 years ago, and I haven't been asked to sing in the church since then. So I know I did a good job, okay? But I don't think it was a coincidence that about 6 weeks later, on February the 12th, 1975. As a second-year apprentice, I was going to work that morning. I noticed when I got up that it had snowed the night before, and there was ice and snow on the road, so I decided I'd go in early, and I'd just read the newspaper till 8 o'clock. So I sat in my car at work with the engine running and the heater on, and a man came up and knocked on the window right there beside me. And I looked over, and he had a hood pulled over his head, and all you could see is the front part of his face. And that didn't alarm me because I had boots and coveralls and a hat and some gloves on the seat beside me. I was ready for cold weather. And besides that, I'm 24 years old, and nothing ever happens to you when you're 24, right? So I rolled down my window and I said, "What do you need?" He said, "I've got a flat on my car. Could you help me?" But before I could answer, there was another man that was on the other side of my car that I didn't notice, and two more men, and one of them jerked the door open and pointed the double-barrel sawed-off shotgun in my face and said, "Get in the floorboard." Now, I've had some of my friends tell me what they would have done in that situation. Karate the guys on the neck and took the gun and arrested all of them. Well, there's a word for that. It's called baloney. Let me tell you what. When you're looking down the business end of a sawed-off shotgun, the last person you're thinking about is Walker, Texas Ranger, okay? You basically do what you're told. They told me to get in the floorboard, and I got in the floorboard. The guy put the shotgun on the back of my head. Well, they had my complete attention, and I remember asking them, the first guy got in and started driving my car out of the parking lot, and the other guy got in the back seat with a pistol, and I remember asking them, I said, "Are you guys planning on killing me?" And they said, "No, we don't want to hurt you, we just need to use your car." But as they were driving along, the first guy, the other two guys had their masks pulled over their face, and the first guy just, he said, "Well, he's seen my face, he can identify me, we got to do something with him." So they stopped the car, told me to get out, and the guy put the shotgun on the back of my head and tried to pull the trigger. But what he didn't know was they were planning on robbing a bank, and they were going to use a stolen car. They had stolen guns from a gun collector, and in the state of Oklahoma, like it is most places, the sawed-off shotgun is an illegal weapon. And in order to display it, the guy had to take the firing mechanism out of there. And so he did, so it wouldn't fire. So I guess this irritated him, because the next thing I know is the guy with the shotgun swung and hit me right there on the side of the head with the barrel. I know it's right there because I've got a big crease where he fractured my skull. Well, I passed out, and at this point I'm laying on the ground, and evidently they picked me up and they put me back into the trunk of my car, because that's where I woke up. And we're driving along, I'm laying in the trunk, and each time they hit the brake lights, it would illuminate the area where I was laying. Now, being an electrician, I have a lot of tools in the trunk of my car, so I figured what I would do is take the catch off and hold the trunk lid down until they slowed down enough where I could jump off the back and take off running out that way while they were driving that way. Well, that was 40 years and 40 pounds ago, so I was a lot lighter and a lot faster then than I am now, so I figured I'd be long gone before they ever saw the trunk lid come up. But somewhere, I got the trunk loose, and I'm just holding it open just enough where I can see, and maybe they won't notice. And I'm just waiting for a chance to jump out when all of a sudden we hit something. Now, I don't know if it's a railroad track or a pothole or something in the road, but anyway, it shook me up pretty hard. And because of the skull fracture, I passed out again. So I've got a mental image of what, there they are trying to go to the bank and try to be inconspicuous, and there I am with the trunk lid open, laying back there in the back, passed out. I guess at this point, I guess I've really irritated them, because the next thing I know is I noticed we're parked in the dump, and there's a little shack in there that's not much bigger than this platform I'm standing on, but it's leaning to one side, about to fall over. But next to the shack in the dump, there's a pile of cinder blocks. That's the 8-inch by 16-inch gray bricks that they used to build a lot of the commercial buildings. Well, several of these bricks have been broken into pieces. And as they're dragging me out of the trunk of my car, each man has a piece of brick in their hand, and they start hitting me in the face with the bricks. And they beat me, and I struggle a little bit, but not for long, and pretty soon I passed out laying on the ground, and the doctors told me that they must have got around me and kicked me until they got tired of kicking, because I was covered with bruises from head to toe. My hip was dislocated, and I had several scrapes and bruises on my body. At that point, they grabbed me by the left leg and dragged me around behind this shack to an outhouse. In the process of dragging me around to the back, they tore some skin off my back, and I later had to have a skin graft there. And then When they got me around to the back, at that point I think they probably figured I was already dead, but just to be sure, they held me up in the outhouse, and one of them put a pistol on the back of my head, and they shot me in the back of the head. I knew it was inside the outhouse because there were blood stains on the inside walls of the outhouse. And then they laid me over the seat of the outhouse, and they closed the door and turned the catch and drove a nail through the catch so the wind wouldn't blow the door open. I figured that they probably thought that's the last anybody would ever hear about me. Then they wired my trunk lid shut with a coat hanger. They drove 2.5 miles south of there. The dump was at 43rd and Westminster in Tacoma Park. They drove 2.5 miles south of there to the Park State Bank, which was at the corner of 23rd and Westminster. And using the shotgun, they intimidated the people in the bank, and they robbed the bank of $6,700. And then they, as they were leaving out, they threw down the registration slip from my car, and they threw the shotgun down, and maybe thinking that would take people off their trail. And then they drove my car 2.5 miles south of there and drove it into a ditch and left the engine running and the doors open and got in another vehicle and drove off. Now the first thing people normally ask me is, did they ever catch these men? I said no. They were wearing gloves, they were wearing masks, they were using a stolen gun, stolen cars, and there wasn't really anything to tie them to the scene except maybe my being able to identify one of the guys, but I don't really remember what he looked like because I was so busy looking at that shotgun, so I really wasn't able to identify him. So as far as most of the people are concerned, they got away scot-free. Meanwhile, back at the outhouse, I woke up and I thought that I was in a closet because I could feel the four walls around me. My right eye was swollen so bad that I couldn't see anything out of it, and I could just see a little bit out of my left eye. One of my friends told me later on, said, Don, if your nose hadn't been broken, you would have known exactly where you were, but that's another story. We won't go there. So I tried to stand up, and when I tried to stand up, my left hip and my right hip and my left knee were out of joint, and I just fell against the door, and the hinges and the catches on the door were rotten, and they fell out into the snow, and I fell on top of it. And as I looked up to what seemed to be the top of a huge hill was that shack, and I just thought if I could crawl up there, I would be out of the weather and be, more comfortable and warmer than what I was. But from the time I crawled the 35 feet from the outhouse to the house, the doctors told me, the FBI told me I must have lay and bled for some time because there were 3 pools of blood between the outhouse and the house. But once I got inside the shack, there was just one piece of furniture there. It was a little couch about 4 foot long, and in front of it was a little woven rug that was covered with holes and dust, and the upholstery was torn on the couch, and there was cotton sticking out, and I could see some springs, but it's the only thing that got me up off the floor. So I crawled up on the couch and pulled that rug up over me, and basically that's the way I spent the next 3 days. They kidnapped me at 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning, and they found me at 2:30 on Friday afternoon. And I'll give you a little bit of details about how that happened. The FBI took the registration from my car and found out where I worked, and they went there, and I wasn't there obviously, and so they started looking at the emergency contacts, and the first person they got a hold to was the pastor of our church, Brother Grisham, and they gave him a description of the men that robbed the bank, and it didn't match my description, and so they said, well, he's probably a hostage then. And Brother Grisham said, well, we'll just get together a bunch of men and we'll go look for him. And they said, well, we don't want you to do that. Leave the looking to the authorities because we consider these men armed and dangerous. We don't want innocent people getting hurt. So Brother Grisham said all Wednesday afternoon, well, he called my family, he notified them, and none of them lived in Oklahoma, but they all started moving up here, and they started coming into the state. And that Wednesday night, he told the people at the church, he said, when they told me don't go look for him, he said, at first I kind of felt kind of helpless. He said, but you know what? He said, as Christians, we're never helpless. He said, what we're going to do is we're going to pray for him. And he brought out some sheets of paper that he had divided into 1-hour increments, and he asked the people to sign that for periods of time that they would commit to be at the altar of the church. So from Wednesday night at 8 o'clock until Friday afternoon at 2:30 when I was found, there was somebody at the altar of the church praying for me. You know, I've had people ask me, they said, did you ever see anybody or hear anything while you were out there? And it's kind of, you know, out of character for me, but no, I didn't see anybody or hear anything, but I felt like there was someone there taking care of me. I felt like I was being ministered to while I was out there. Now, I knew I was beaten pretty bad, I was hurting and I couldn't move, but I felt like someone was right there with me, and a couple of times I felt like if I could just turn and look, I could see whoever it was. But for you touched by an angel fans, I never did see Monica, and thank goodness I never saw Andrew. You know what that means? Andrew was the angel of death, you know. But people asked me, said, did you think you were going to die while you were out there? And I said, no, I never did. I knew I was hurt, I knew I was beaten, but I was just laying there, and while I was awake, most of the time I would just hold my head up because this side of my face was crushed, this bone was broken, the bones above both my eyes were broken, I had 5 skull fractures, my jaw was broken and my nose was broken, and I had a bullet in the back of my head. So there was no way to lay my head that didn't hurt. So I would just wake up and I would hold my head up until I pass out again. And so, but I never felt like I was going to die because I felt like someone was taking care of me, and I just wondered how long it would be before someone would find me. Well, Brother Grisham had notified my family, and they all got up here, and my brother worked for a radio station in Kansas, and he devised a plan. What they would do is some of my people that I worked with, some of my friends at church, had offered money for a reward, and he said, well, we'll just offer that on the radio and on TV. And so they started playing appeals that they had taken. And some people looked for me on Thursday, and some people looked for me on Friday morning, and they hadn't found me yet. And by the grace of God, you know, a lot of people say it's coincidence, but I believe that God engineers the circumstances, because on Wednesday when they kidnapped me, it was 20 degrees, there was ice and snow, and on Wednesday afternoon it warmed up into the 50s, and on Thursday it was in the high 50s, and on Friday afternoon at 2:30 it was 63 degrees. Well, because of that, the ice and snow had melted, and this one young man had heard about the reward, and he needed money for something. I won't get into that, but he was looking for me, and he looked for me all day Thursday, he said, and then Friday until about lunch, and he said he was going to go to his grandmother's house for lunch. But as normally he would turn on 41st Street off of Westminster and go to his grandmother's house, but this particular day, 41st Street was muddy because all the ice and snow had melted and the road was just almost impassable. So he just thought, well, I'll take a shortcut around by the dump. He'd done that before. So he went around as he drove past the dump. Now, I've been laying there for 3 days and I hadn't heard or seen anybody or anything. And all of a sudden I hear this car driving by, and by this time I'm so stiff I couldn't have got up if I wanted to, so I just started waving my arms in the window that was broken out right there in the front. And he said, normally he didn't look over there because that was a well-known place where they did drug deals and other things, and so he said he normally wouldn't even look over there because the people that were in there wasn't anybody that wanted him looking at him. So, but this particular time, he looked over there and he saw some movement in there, and in his mind he said, well, that's not the first time I've seen anything. So he just kept on driving. But he got about a block past there when the radio was on, and he heard this appeal that my brother said, you know, if you see him, just let us know where he's at, and we'll give you the money, no questions asked. And he thought, well, this is about the right area. You don't want her to turn around and take a closer look from the other direction. And when he turned around and he drove past the house from the other direction, he noticed right there beside the house a pile of bricks and blood stains on the side of the house where it must have fallen against it. And he said he got nervous and he didn't stop, and he drove on to his grandmother's house and he called the police. Now I've been laying out there for 3 days and hadn't heard hardly anything, and all of a sudden I hear all this commotion outside. I hear sirens and I can see lights flashing, and I hear people outside talking and walking around, but no one's coming in. And I keep wondering, you know, why doesn't somebody come in and help me? My jaw's broken, so I can't holler out at them, and I'm laying there and I'm wondering, you know, waiting, you know, somebody come in and help me. And all of a sudden I hear, all right, we have you surrounded. Come out with your hands up. I would love to come out with my hands up. You know, praise the Lord, you know, but I can't get up. So I just lay there for a couple more minutes, and this guy jumps in there, knocks the door open, and he swings his rifle around there, And I was just thinking, I don't care, good guy, bad guy, I need some help. So I try to get up, and all I can do is roll off and fall on the floor. And he hollers out there, "Oh my God, he's alive, get an ambulance out here." Well, they get an ambulance, and they take me to Midwest City Hospital. And when we get to the hospital, it's kind of almost a comedy scene, because I'm going in there, I'm beaten, they're barely alive, and here's these newspaper reporters, TV reporters with microphones. "Mr. Lowrey, can you tell us anything? Can you give us any idea? Do you know the guys that got you?" And, I'm just laying there. So anyway, they take me into the hospital, and they do emergency treatment on me there at Midwest City Regional Hospital, and the doctors let the FBI know that I'm getting to the point where I'm out of danger, and I'm going to live. And so they're worried that these guys might try to get back in the bank and finish the job that they started. So they moved me across town to Deacon's Hospital, and they put me in a hospital room there, and put a guard outside my door. And so Friday afternoon, the doctors do treatment on me and everything else, and I start coming around, and I really don't remember anything until Saturday morning, when the doctors start coming in and telling me how bad my injuries were. This first doctor that came in and talked to me was the plastic surgeon, and he told me, well, he said, "We're going to have to wire these bones back together," but he said, "That's okay, we'll just split your eyebrows and wire them back together." And now I don't have any eyebrows. And he said, "This bone here," he said, "you've lost several teeth," and he said, "We're going to go in through the inside of your mouth and wire that back together so that you won't have any scars across here." And he said, your jaw is just a compound fracture, so we'll just have to wait for it to heal up, and your nose, that's just a cartilage, so that's not a big deal. He said, "Most of your scars are on top of your head," and he said, "We'll let your hairline cover that out." They had shaved my head so they could do the surgery. But he asked me a question I thought was kind of strange at the time. He said, "By the way, how much gray hair did you have before this happened?" I was 24 years old. I said, "I don't have any gray hair." He said, "You do now, it's all gray." So, you've heard people say their hair turned gray overnight. I don't know about that, but it will turn gray in 3 days, because on Wednesday morning I didn't have any gray hair, and on Friday when they found me, it was all gray. Over the years I've kind of had some fun with it, because people used to ask me, they say, "How come somebody so young has so much gray hair?" And I tell them, "Lead poisoning." "What?" "Well, I got a bullet in my head." But I felt like that was a way to start telling about what God had brought me through. And now that I'm 67 years old, they don't ask me that much anymore. I kind of miss it, but that's okay. It is what it is. But anyway, so what he told me really didn't bother me, because everything he said sounded kind of positive. Then the next doctor that came in was the oral surgeon. He said, "Well, you've got 14 teeth that are damaged beyond repair, and we're just going to have to take them out and give you a partial plate." Well, my dad had a partial plate, and it didn't stop him from anything, so that didn't bother me a whole lot. And then the next doctor that came in was the neurosurgeon, and he was telling me about the bullet that was lodged in my skull. And he said, "If we take the bullet out," he said, "then you're going to have a hole, and we'll have to put a plate over the hole." He said, "Now, if we leave the bullet there," he said, "it's lead, and your bone will grow around it, kind of encase it, and then your bone there will be thicker." And he said, "There won't be any danger of it moving." So he said, "We think it'd be a better deal just to leave it in there." And so, he said, "And it won't be any big deal, because, because he said, a little lead in your head doesn't hurt you a bit, And so anyway, they let that in. I still had the bullet lodged in my skull, and people asked me, "Do I set the alarms off in the airport?" No, that doesn't do it. It's lead. It's not anything that would do that. So I didn't have to worry about that. But then the one doctor that really bothered me was the orthopedic surgeon. He came in and he told me that my hip and my knee were so severely dislocated that it might be months before I could walk without crutches, and that I may never walk without a limp. Well, I was really involved with football, basketball, baseball. As a matter of fact, I officiated football and basketball and baseball for 37 years in the high schools around Oklahoma. And so, having played sports and being involved with it, the last thing I wanted to hear was that I was going to have some kind of physical limitation, especially at 24 years old. And so that really bothered me. And what I didn't realize was the first surgery they did was the orthopedic surgery. And when they got me under the anesthesia and they were able to do manipulation, as I think is what he called it, he just kind of put the bones back into place, and he said, then they x-rayed and they said there wasn't any real damage other than just some inflammation to the tendons and ligaments. So basically there wasn't any permanent damage in that. Now I didn't know that. That was Monday night when they did that. So Tuesday morning about 2:30 I woke up. Now I wasn't in a semi-private room. I had my own room, but I was wearing one of those semi-private gowns, you know, they give you the ones that don't quite get together in the back. And some of the kids from my church, rather than bringing me a card, they got a basketball, because that's middle basketball season. They got me a basketball, and they knew I loved to play, and so they signed their name on it, and, you know, we love you, get well soon, and all this on the basketball. Well, I'm laying there with an IV in my arm, and the night duty nurses just woke me up to give me a shot so I could sleep. You know how they do that. So, anyway, I was laying there, and the drugs started flowing. I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm looking over there on the counter, and there's that basketball. So I'm thinking, you know, hey, I need to get in shape. The team needs me, you know. So I get up and I go get that basketball, and I start dribbling it around the room. Well, there's a bed, there's a chair, there's flowers, there's a TV, there's all kinds of stuff in there, and it's all in the way. So I'll just go out in the hall. I got plenty of room out there. So I start dribbling out in the hall, and the night duty nurse said she's sitting there at her desk now doing whatever it is she was doing, and she put it down at the end of the hall. She looks out there and she said, it was just a sight that brought a song to her heart. Of course, the song was Moon River, if you know what I mean. I'm dribbling the basketball. Well, she calls a couple of nurses, and they get my arm, and they say, Mr. Lowrey, you've got to go back to bed. You're disturbing the other patients. And no, the team needs me. Well, they called Tiny. Tiny was 6'6", 300-pound male nurse who was really irritated because he was taking a nap and someone woke him up to deal with an unruly patient. So Tiny picks me up just like this and takes me and lays me down in the bed and says, stay there. I'm hurt enough, I don't need Tiny on my case, okay? So I lay there, but I tell that story because it's a funny story, but also it illustrates the fact that even though they said that I might be months without walking with crutches, 3 days later, 4 days later, I was up walking around in the hospital. Matter of fact, on Thursday, the doctors came in after doing several other surgeries. They came in on Thursday, and they're looking at their charts, and they said, you know, Mr. Lowrey, your vital signs are good. You've had 500 stitches in your face and head. You've had a skin graft on your back. You've had your hip and knee replaced. You've had several teeth cut out. You've had all these surgeries and everything else. But, you know, really, there's no reason for you to be here. We're going to send you home tomorrow. So on Friday morning, they put me in a wheelchair because that's hospital policy, and they wheeled me outside. And when we got to the outside, I got up and I walked to my mother's car. I never had to use crutches at all. So I just tell people, you know, God just healed me completely physically. I really don't have anything that related back to that. I mean, I got implants now. I used to have a partial plate, but you know, nothing that's really physically wrong with me that was related to that. And so I just think that, you know, God just healed me completely physically. But there's a couple other ways that I say that God healed me. And one of them, I use the term financially, because being in the hospital, having all those surgeries, I had thousands of dollars of medical bills that I didn't have insurance to pay for. You know, I had a portion of it, but then it went into major medical, so I still had several $1,000s that I was responsible for. But it seemed like every day, while I was laying there in the hospital, 3 or 4 guys would come in, all these different jobs that I had worked on as an apprentice. They passed the hat on the job. They'd come in, they'd say, you know, we took up a collection, here's your $300, $400, $700, you know, and, you know, just use that to help pay your bills. So I would give that to the hospital. But by the time, you know, when they sent me home on Friday, they gave me a big, long hospital bill that I still owed, and it was several $1,000s, and I didn't know where that was going to come from. But I think God opened the hearts of people, because I started getting cards and letters in from all over this United States from people that had heard about it. I remember I got some from New York State, and I got some from Florida, and some from California, some from Washington, and, you know, a lot from here in Oklahoma. And it was like, go out to the mailbox. I was living in an apartment, and check the mailbox, and it'd be like Christmas in March, because there would be a bunch of cards in there, and they'd almost all of them say the same thing. We wish we could help you, but, you know, we're praying for you, and here's $5, here's $10, here's $100, you know. And I took all that money, and by the time the money stopped coming in, I had more than enough money to pay every penny of my medical bill, so I didn't have to pay 1 cent out of my pocket. So it didn't cost me 1 cent for that to happen to me. So, I say the Lord took care of me financially too. But I think the most important way that the Lord took care of me is that people, when I was a kid, people still do it, they say, I don't get mad, I get even. Well, I always thought that was kind of a wimpy thing to say. If somebody hits me, I'm going to hit them back or whatever, So I used to say, I don't get mad, I get ahead. I try to do something worse back to you than you do to me, so you won't mess with me. But then again, I got to thinking, how do you get ahead of someone who's hit you in the mouth with a brick? How do you get ahead of someone who's kicked you until you couldn't stand? How do you get ahead of someone who's put a bullet in the back of your head and left you out in the woods for 3 days? Well, you know what? If you're a Christian, it's easy. The Bible says, love your enemies. Pray for those that spitefully use you. And I believe I was pretty spitefully used. So for 43 years since that's happened, every time I share my testimony, I say, pray for those men. I don't know who they are. I never did meet them. I don't have any idea. They'd never be charged even if I knew who they were because there's no evidence. So basically, it would be easy to be mad at them. But you know what? God just never allowed me to be mad at him. He never put any anger in my heart. And every now and then I get to go talk to people in prisons and I look around and say, they never did catch those guys. I might be talking to one of you right now. And if I am, I want to let you know, I love you. I've been praying for you. God, I tell them, just like Joseph told his brothers in Genesis 50:20, God, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And so 43 years later and having shared my testimony over 1,000 times, I thank God that happened to me. I tell people I don't want to do any reenactments or anything, but I was praying and asking God for a testimony, and here it is 43 years later. I'm here this morning. Next week I'm going up to Oklahoma, and share my testimony at a youth rally, and God just opened so many doors. I speak to civic groups, and I can go to schools, and a lot of preachers say, we can't go into schools because we're preachers, but you can go in there and you can tell them about that. And so God has opened up so many doors for me to share my testimony. But you know what? In application, I want to bring it down to the point that there's two things that happened. Number one, I was a Christian when that happened to me. So if that bullet had gone into my brain and killed me, I would have been, the Bible tells us to be absent from this body is to be present with the Lord. So I believe I would have been right with Jesus, and that would have been a good thing. But because I'm here, the Bible says we have a responsibility. We're the ones that take the words to other people. So, you know what? I tell people, you don't have to have some kind of testimony like this because God can use you. I can't save anyone. The blood I spilled is not going to save anybody, but I can tell you how to get saved. I can tell you whose blood will save you. I can tell you what about Jesus Christ. And there's, you know what? There's someone in your life that doesn't know Jesus Christ. And the only testimony that you need to have is that Jesus Christ died for me. That's the only testimony you need. You don't need some great story you can tell people. Just start telling them about Jesus. The Holy Spirit will take over and he'll do it for you. So now I'm going to tell you two things right now. If you, as a Christian, can't think of anyone who's not saved in your life, I'm going to say shame on you. You need to go meet lost people. They're out there. They're everywhere. Look for someone. Ask God to show someone to you. And then share what God has done in your life. Jesus Christ saved you for all eternity. He didn't save you for a few more years here on earth. He saved you for all eternity. You're living in eternity right now. You'll just move from this form to another form and you'll be in eternity forever. There are people who need to hear that. There are people who need to hear what Jesus Christ has done in your life. But you know what? At the time, I was 24 years old. I was right where I was supposed to be. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. But my life could have been snuffed out like that. We don't know if we're going to make it home today. You know, there's accidents all the time. There's crazy people in the world. We never know. Do you know what? If you know Jesus Christ, you don't have to worry about that. But if you don't know Jesus Christ, your life's in danger. If you don't know Jesus Christ, the Bible tells us now is the accepted time. So we're going to pray this morning. And if you don't know Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you're not guaranteed anything. So if you don't know Jesus Christ, now is the time. There are going to be some ministers down here, and we're going to pray. And when I do, I'm going to ask you, if you don't know Jesus Christ, why not? There are people that the greatest thrill you can give a Christian is to ask them to share Christ with you. Tell them how to get saved, because That's the biggest thrill a Christian can have, is to be in the presence of someone who needs the Lord. So this morning we're going to pray, and we're going to ask you, if you don't know Jesus Christ, do it this morning. Don't take any chances. Don't think like I do, that everything I'm doing is okay, because you never know. But if you do know Jesus Christ, think about someone who needs to find him, and think about how you can share him with him. If you don't know how, we'll tell you how. We'll show you how. We'll give you things, okay? So let's pray right now, and then I'll ask the pastors to come down to the front. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I do appreciate Dr. Kern opening his pulpit for me this morning. We want to pray for him as he's doing his mission work, and Lord, but we also want to pray for the people here that might not know Jesus Christ as their personal Savior. We just ask, Lord, that maybe something in my story would encourage them that now is the proper time and now is the accepted time. And Lord, we just ask them to don't worry about what people think, because we think if you're not saved and you get saved, that's the greatest thing in the world. So just open their hearts up, Lord, and just talk to them and encourage them to come on down. We just ask, Lord, that if someone is saved and not witnessing, Lord, you encourage them to share the testimony of Jesus Christ in their life to the people, the friends in their life. Preachers can't do it because they expect the preachers to do that. But if their own friends tell them about Jesus Christ, then they'll listen. So we just ask, Lord, that you open up the hearts and the minds of the saved people here to share Christ with other people. And we just thank you for this church. It's in the middle of a community that needs Jesus Christ. The whole world needs Jesus Christ. And in our community is where we serve. So we just ask, Lord, that you encourage the people to reach out to the people that are right here in the shadow of the church that don't know Jesus Christ, and share the love of Jesus with them. We just thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.